Hi, kitty cats. A recent podcast lamented that boys are half a grade behind girls by the time they're 8 years old. The suggested fix for this issue is to make education easier for boys, which ignores entirely why the education gap developed in the first place. And here's a hint. It's not because boys have less access to education than girls. It's because boys are taught they are naturally superior in every way, which leads to what I call the Patriarchy Paradox. The more men believe their press, the less they are willing to hear feedback on their performance. Okay, so here we go. Here are my little live stream opening plugs. I'm Dr. Amethysta Herrick. I am both a scientist and a content creator. I discuss identity and gender. Using primarily the scientific method, you'll notice we're going to be talking about some psychology tonight. You can find a lot more information about me and the work that I do if you look at the website down below, that is purplepawclan.com. There you can find all the social media networks that I am on. You can read the articles that I write. You can listen to and even watch podcasts I record with interesting people. They really are interesting people. And finally, you can also check out the hypnotherapy work that I do to help people work through some of these issues with identity and gender. If you would like to support my work, reason to believe you don't, you can get a subscription on the website for as little as $5 a month. You can also get a subscription on my YouTube channel. You can sign up for my free newsletter, which publishes about every 2 weeks. I think there's one coming out on Saturday. And, but even if you just followed me on social media and liked and shared everything I got, that would be amazing support, and I would thank you for it. And finally, I do like to publish other people's work on the website, which again was purplepawclan.com. If you'd like to contribute your original work in identity and gender, you can email me. There's a contact page on my website that I just spiffed up a little bit. I had a little CAPTCHA thing on it. So if you email me using that contact page on the website, once again, purplepawclan.com. There you go. There's all my plugs. Took me a couple minutes to pull through that, didn't it? So you see Genevieve, hello. A trance state feels really good. Hi, Margie, by the way. There's Margie and Charlotte. Anybody out there? I don't know who else is out there. Charlotte, so you're asking, are there any V-neck shirts on the merchandise site? I will have to find out. I can certainly make some. There is I have to do some color changes, but I couldn't log into the merchandise site, and I only just found out, or just got back in today, so I will set something up, believe me. So tonight, what do I want to talk about tonight? Tonight I want to talk about what I said, the Patriarchy Paradox. There's a recent podcast, and actually Ruvik, if you're out there, Ruvik recommended an article on the Discord server. It's kind of long. Recommended an article on the Discord server that referenced this podcast. So I went out to, oh dang, the audio is glitching badly. Has cut out. I don't know. I wonder if that's me. Tell me if this is getting any better if I sit back a little bit. So there's a recent podcast. The podcast is called On Point. In this podcast, they discussed how boys are falling behind girls in school, in education. And now they're saying this happens as early as 8 years old today, like in the present time. As a result, the podcast recommends taking some kind of action. They're saying, we have to save boys from this growing education gap. I do have that cranked down a little bit. So we have to save boys from this education gap. Now, the data of this growing education gap starts to become more obvious. It starts to become more obvious about 30 years ago. So this was, 90s, right? So this was 1990s. I find this really interesting. So 30 years ago, at this point, 30 years ago, women consistently outperformed men at least in undergraduate institutions. 30 years ago. So this growing education gap started about then. But interestingly, It was only 50 years ago now that women were barred from Ivy League schools for being inferior. Turns out the men running those colleges felt they'd need to lower their standards if they were going to admit women, because otherwise, women wouldn't be able to compete. Did women's lib, did that change things that quickly? No. No, of course not. Turns out women were actually barred entirely from education for about the first 200 years of the existence of the United States. This is not a sudden, magical, hey, look, we caught up kind of effect. But wouldn't that be interesting to consider if it were, that over 50 years women were able to catch up on 200 years of history? But given women were unable even to have bank accounts, credit cards, education, how is it that ultimately one generation of humans changed things so drastically? How is it that today this problem is even worse, getting even worse? Wow, that was broken. So what I'm going to do is just say never mind and put on a headset. Give me a sec. Not going to bother with anything else. I'm just going to go with this microphone. I don't know what's going on with my I don't know what's going on with my nice audio interface. It's a bummer because it's a nice audio interface, and I assume that my going through this mic is going to be a little bit less fun. But I don't know where I cut out. But the problem here, when we were talking about women being behind, the problem here is really patriarchy. Uh, the representatives of the patriarchy are saying one thing about good um, how good the patriarchy is making things, but we observe another. What the representatives of a patriarchy say is that men are just naturally better at everything. Men are smarter, men are better leaders, men are stronger, men are faster, men are less emotional, and as a result, men had advantages that go back centuries. Why would this suddenly happen? Like many centuries, not just the 200 years of the United States. Why would this suddenly happen? So today what we're going to talk about, interestingly, the other side of stigma, right? So how marginalizing one group actually can come back to those who stigmatize, and whether or not we can get out of this mess, and how to do it. I got to tell you, I've got to pop this up. Bo says, well, great. It's going to feel like we're talking with a salesperson with a headset, right? I feel very. And if you buy now for just $19.99. Of course, after we've solved all the world's problems tonight, we can play some super lesbian animal RPG, because we are still in Javis's lair. Is the showdown imminent? Only time will tell. Okay. So let's return to stigma. Maybe you recall I did a live stream, it was a couple of weeks back, where I talked about stigma. And stigma is making certain people, having a group, make certain people feel outside the group. Irving Goffman, where's the book? Here it is. Here's his actual book called Stigma. How about it? Irving Goffman defines stigma as disqualified from full social acceptance. Disqualified. I like that. I like that definition. Well, I don't like the definition. Do appreciate how it's worded. And this happens in many situations. When we talked, obviously, I talked about the queer community specifically, but obviously this happens to women, to black people, this happens to anybody who can be marginalized. And that could be in a positive way. Maybe you remember I talked about like the nerds at school. They're stigmatized, but technically they're stigmatized because they do too well at school. And so people make fun of them. Them, right? Because it wasn't me. When you are feeling disqualified from full social acceptance, it costs mental effort. It takes more effort ultimately to do the work that we need to do. And there were two ways that I mentioned that manifests. The first is attributional ambiguity. We're not going to have to go through all of these. We're not going to go through these as in depth as we did before. But it's the sense that you are wrong in some way, but you really don't know why. Like somebody goes, yeah, we're going to stigmatize you, but you don't really have any feedback on that. You don't know what could possibly be wrong. So we worry. We worry about actually what we should do, what we can do. The other way that stigma manifests is as stereotype threat, is what it's called. So we know that other people who are like we are face stigma. Whether or not we're facing it immediately, at the immediate, right now at this point in time, we know that other people have. And so we worry about falling into the stereotype, either in a positive way or in a negative way. And so we try to divorce ourselves from the stereotype. So again, that's more worry. And ultimately what all of this does is result in what we've called ego depletion. And ego depletion means having less capacity to do work. But as long as we're talking about work here, look, I'm looking at today is today is Anita's birthday. First of all, hi Anita, and second happy birthday. So I'm assuming you're like 24 today, so that's pretty good. I do like this. So Margie says she was a nerd way before it was fashionable. I'm not sure if it's fashionable today, for what it's worth, but Anita, interesting. So Anita says she didn't think there were a lot of formal restrictions to women's education in 1950. It was in the 1970s, so I said 50 years ago. In the 1970s, Ivy League schools were still closed to women, which presumably would mean they were still closed in the 1950s as well. But if you look at that one article that was posted, and if you want, I can find it for you and send you a link. But it's really interesting. The author goes into how all of these, how far this actually goes back, and it's hundreds of years. It's really creepy. Look at this. Bo says all we're missing now is a tapping nails on the desk and the smacking a gun. Well, wait until we get into the video game, and I'm sure that'll happen. But I was opening up a box last night, and my wife was like, "Hey, you need to she says you need to put do the opening, whatever it's called, the box opening thing. What do we call those? Anyway, you have to tap your nails on everything. So it's like, here we opening the box. Here we're opening it again. And I could do smack and gum like, okay, here we go. So ego depletion means having less capacity to do work. Anyway, we use up willpower that could have been used otherwise. It could be used to improve performance altogether. Wait, now the stream has stopped. Was that so? No, it still shows I'm going. Okay. This becomes chronic. Ultimately, this becomes chronic unless the stigma changes. And if you have less capacity, this means lower performance in many life categories. So to sum up here, stigma is correlated with marginal groups, and we see in almost all of these marginal groups worse housing, worse access to housing, worse access to employment, worse access or worse performance in relationships, and worse education, interestingly. And again, it's not the being different that causes a lower performance. It's not being a woman, it's not being black, it's not being queer, it's having those differences perceived as stigma. It's the stigma that causes the lower performance. It's the social environment uh, applying stigma that leads to lower performance. So, how does this lower performance happen? Because believe it or not, it isn't entirely about stigma. Let me look at this. So, everybody's saying happy birthday to Anita. That's good. Oh my gosh, look at this. We got, I'm not even sure. Oh, it's like a firework. A firework and a candle and a cake. Excellent. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I love using this joke. So here we go. Anita, so here's your birthday. Wear a cake for me. Wear a cake. Um, I believe you. So here we go. So now Angela's saying in the 60s, dyslexia was treated as being stupid and not being given any help. Yeah, because nobody knows what's going on. Angel Ho is here. Hello, Angel. um, obviously we didn't know any better, but aside from that, there's, the further we go back in history, the more we've been willing just to go, you know what? Yeah, stigma. We're just going to stigmatize you because it makes sense. You seem like a weird person. We're just going to stigmatize you. And I think and I find that deplorable, first of all. So, let me see. What do we got? Bo says drum roll. Right. I'm opening the box. Drum roll. Okay. So what builds performance? So first of all, here we go. So Margie brings up, yeah, she totally agrees. Stigma is a burden to performance. And what builds performance? Training. I mean, basically, you repeat a task over and over again until we get it right. And until we do it well. The unfortunate thing there is that you need a standard by which to measure yourself. We have to know what a task done well actually means. What is doing it right? And for that, we need to have feedback. I used the word feedback a little bit earlier on. We need feedback. And the problem here, I mean, it's good and bad. Feedback can be very difficult to take. Because if you're already stigmatized, you might be really sensitive to criticism. You might really feel foolish for doing something wrong, whatever that means. And that doesn't even have to be if you are marginalized. You don't even have to be marginalized to feel that criticism. But if you are marginalized, you might also be worrying about all these other social skills. And what all of this means is that you have less ability to receive that feedback. You're not able to internalize the feedback. That capacity to bring it in and to integrate it and to improve whatever, it goes elsewhere. So ultimately, what causes lower performance, hate to put it like this, it really doesn't matter if you're marginalized or not. If you can't receive feedback, you simply cannot improve regularly. You just can't. But remember, I said that marginalized groups struggle more with education. How is it that women could conceivably be doing better than men? Because that's the point of this whole thing. This was the reason I even bothered to write this down as the subject to talk about today. How is it that a marginalized group that is facing stigma and as a result may not be able to receive the feedback that they need, how could they be doing better than men? Let me see. Actually, here's an interesting tidbit because Margie has a fascinating mother, and I hit the wrong one. Hang on, I'll get to that one. Margie says her mother, who got her education in the 50s, right, and 60s, is dyslexic, but she wound up being one of the most potent academics in the world. So, agreed. Adversity can sometimes create drive. There's a lot we could talk about there because certainly sometimes when you face stigma, what you do is end up with a very low sense of self-worth, and you go, well, I'm going to prove to them, right? I'm going to show them. That may or may not be healthy. I mean, your mother ended up doing really well, and so luckily that turned out all right. But I've spoken to several people. I spoke to somebody today who said she pushes herself at work really, really hard because of a sense of low self-worth. And she needs to push herself really hard in order to feel like she has any value. So sometimes Adversity helps. Sometimes it doesn't. And here you go, another great point from Margie. Autism makes all of those social barriers and burdens even worse. What's interesting, usually you'll see one of the characteristics anyway, does not all of them, but one of the characteristics of the autistic spectrum is the inability to judge social norms. And so you might think, oh, well, they're not going to, I'm saying they, I have no idea if I'm on the spectrum, but um, the you will find people, shoot, what the hell was I talking about? Oh, yeah, sure. The characteristic of not necessarily judging social norms. So you would think, well, they're not going to feel a stereotype type threat because they're not even in that kind of thing. Like they wouldn't see that there was a stereotype. Maybe they wouldn't feel an attributional ambiguity because it's like, well, who cares what you think? I don't think that's entirely true. So I'm with you on that, Margie. Um, the growing education gap. The reason this podcast was even made, it's pretty clear, and who knows, maybe you're going to disagree with this, but you probably aren't. It's pretty clear that in today's world, men are held up as the pinnacle of what? Everything. I once defined a patriarchy as a society that believes the highest accomplishment a human can achieve is simply to be assigned male at birth. It's not performance. I mean, it comes down to one letter on a birth certificate. There is, of course, a relationship to the performance there. In this case, and here's where the stigma starts to weave into this, there is a relationship because in this case, you actually can't change the sex you were assigned at birth. Before you go, I forgot how you say on the contrary. Au contraire? I think that was it. Au contraire, mon ami. Yes, you can change the letter on your birth certificate. I did it. I mean, obviously, I've made a lot of changes personally. What I'm talking about is you can't go back and change that one event from when you were born. You were assigned a sex at birth. So you can't go back and change history. And of course, we have plenty of people, loads of people who want to hold me and many of us to what I didn't choose when I was born. So now I have a characteristic that was involuntary, and they go, well, this is just who you are. This is what feeds into the entire conservative rhetoric. They'd rather hold me to what I didn't choose when I was born as opposed to my behavior, as opposed to who I am as a person. And there are certainly people when it comes to talking of the patriarchy who say, supposedly you have all the benefits. You had all the benefits. You still have all the benefits. You can't stop having all the benefits of being a man in a patriarchy. Anyway, that's other people. Let's look at this patriarchy today. Actually, let me look at a couple of these things. Here we go. So Angela. So Angela says, after the dyslexia, after being treated as stupid, her parents sent her to a private school to get extra help for the dyslexia and since she's achieved very high qualifications. And you seem like an amazing person to me, so I think that must be true. Yeah, I hear you. So I think this was in reference to adversity can sometimes create drive. I think Anita is saying, yeah, I don't think it worked out well for Margie and her siblings. I think it doesn't work out well for most people. I think it takes a certain personality to go, all right, I'm going to take this adversity and turn it into like something else. So patriarchy, let's look at this. Here's an interesting observation. Men have always and continue to make more money than women. Yet I started off this podcast, this live stream saying that women are better educated. And this goes back at least 30 years. Turns out we have data that goes back pretty far. It's an interesting observation. Men continue to make more money, but women are actually probably in a spot where they should make more money. and they don't. So what causes this? Oh, I see Vesper. Hi, Vesper. So what causes this? What causes this is not because men truly are superior, but it comes down to what we talked about when we were talking about performance. It's lack of feedback. Remember that feedback is critical to our performance. And now just to bring this back around, stigma ends up causing lower performance because more mental effort means the inability to receive that feedback. I mean, even if it's just, to receive it gracefully, whatever, ultimately you end up at a point where the feedback isn't entirely trusted. So think about this. What happens when you believe, when you've been taught that you're naturally superior? You end up in the same place. Now instead of not receiving feedback because you're using too much mental effort, you ignore the feedback. It's inapplicable. If somebody says something and you go, that's inapplicable, again, you're not trusting that feedback. In this case, somewhat, this isn't really irony, but in this case, there's no stigma blocking the way. What blocks the way is hubris. Like hubris is probably a good word for this. It's arrogance at having to prove yourself in a patriarchy. So you have a man in a patriarchy. What blocks them from receiving feedback is simply hubris. They go, why should I have to explain myself? Why should I have to, do the things that I want to do? Why should I have to do the things that will get me all the stuff? Why don't I just get it? The patriarchy says men should make more money, right? You're better qualified. If you're a man, you're better qualified because you got an M on your birth certificate. And what's crazy is that when you believe that, you continue to be less qualified because of that. You become less qualified in the ways that matter. So what's the social cost of this paradox? What can we do about it? Well, I'll get there, but it is almost 5:30, so let me do my do my station identification. I'm Amethysta Herrick, Dr. Amethysta Herrick. I am a scientist and a content creator. I talk about identity and gender using the scientific method, and today we're looking at some social psychology having to do with stigma and how the patriarchy ends up in a paradoxical position, which we're just about to get to. Think about that. Think about that. I'm a little unsure how to read this. Let's see. So Margie says her mom did well, but increasing the context. Oh, to our nuclear family. Okay, I was reading it strangely, which was a Fallout kind of nuclear. I wonder if Ash is listening to this. Yes, success was certainly not balanced in her life. One of those things that I've been thinking about is like, what does success mean, right? We continue to do this, to make this equation. Success in some way means like money, but it's more than just money. We also think, well, success means I'm going to be happy, but if success also means money, then money should make us happy. That should be rewarding. There's what is the reflexive property? What is that? Margie, you're the math person. I think it's the reflective property. The associative? That's not important. The point is that we are taught that if we have a big salary, we're going to make, the definition of success is having a big salary, getting this money. The definition of sex is also success. Sorry. And therefore, those two must be equal. Money's going to bring you happiness. And when it doesn't, we go, well, what's wrong with me? Well, what's wrong with you is actually believing that the definition of success should be making a ton of cash. That should be the first part. The second part makes sense. Success should be feeling happy. So Margie, thank you for this comment. The idea that I don't know if this was where your mother was. This was something that I've been thinking about recently, talking about recently. So, Oh, you always have the greatest stick 'em to you kind of things. Bo says, I guess she's on the spectrum because she views social norms as irrational. Yeah, I love that. Vesper, thank you for sending me that gift. Thank you so much. Uh, I so much of me doesn't want to go into this. So Margie says she struggled enormously with patriarchal BS because she even had a job where she knew she was paid more because of her sex, and she hated that. Yeah, it's like working in technology, isn't it? And then she found herself facing non-normative challenges and was discounted from facing this abuse and even scapegoated for my victimization due to patriarchal biases. Yeah. I know you said you're going to elaborate. There's something I wanted to bring up because when I was in technology, I would say there was the same because women get treated horribly in technology. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to pop up this other one too. Get treated horribly in technology. I was treated okay. I mean, I also worked really, really hard. But when I got to some of these non-normative challenges, just like what you're saying, uh, like going to talk to a C-suite kind of meeting and not being able to play the toxic masculine card very well or at all, and it ends up worse. So now it ends up worse. Hi Jade. Hi Bassy Bell. That's cute. So I think it ends up worse. So here we go. So now we'll go home. We'll go to what you said. To elaborate, Margie was subjected to intimate partner violence to its most extreme levels. And I know some of us may have heard some of this story. The police actually said, "Well, we just remove men from these situations," and so there's one of those biases right there is that they go, "Well, if there's a domestic violence situation here, it must be the man's fault." And not to go off too much on that. I mean, there have been times when I've been talking to like a psychologist, and they've gone, "Oh, well, sure," as if to say, "Well, like all men are like that," and I'm like, "Okay, but that's not me." So, all right. I think actually this just said it. So when Angela says when she was pretending to be male, she didn't get any benefits because she never fitted into the norm. Yeah. So we end up stigmatized no matter what, right? Because we're supposed to have all these benefits, but we didn't have them because we're stigmatized. And that's, I guess, where I'm gonna go when people say, "Oh, well, you started off with an M on your birth certificate. So clearly you've had all the benefits. Clearly you still get all the benefits. You'll always get all the benefits because I'm sure anybody who's watched at least one of these live streams knows I always get treated exceptionally well when I'm on these live streams, right? People clearly love me. People clearly want, I mean, except for like those of you who do care about me, but we've gotten people in here, right, who just want to be vile. They want to be vile because, they want to stigmatize me. Anyway, do we get all the benefits? No, I'm going to say that. Um, this is an excellent point. So Anita says the only male benefit they may have gotten was that their talent was never doubted or dismissed, but not fitting in limited their options for sure. That's a tough one, isn't it? When there is a I mean, I've brought up these stories where now that I'm presenting as a woman, I get people who make this assumption. They go, well, clearly you're not going to know about things like numbers. I mean, not like you'd be able to remember your phone number or something. Do you have your address, or should we call your husband to get your address? Can you remember his phone number, honey? Yeah, when you present as a man, your talents are not doubted. Your talents are not dismissed. Your opinion is not dismissed or doubted. And this ends up feeding directly into, what I think we're talking about here. This social cost, the social cost here of this patriarchy, men are given all the benefit of the doubt. Benefits of the doubt? Benefit of the doubts? Anyway, men are always not doubted, not dismissed. Thank you. uh, in a patriarchy, it's part of the definition, right? Men are naturally superior at everything. And yet, we're seeing that they perform worse than women. Certainly in education, like I said, there's data that goes back at this point about 100 years that when you open up opportunities in education, women will outperform men. And it's because of the privilege. These men are not facing stigma. These men are facing privilege, and this privilege causes worse performance. When you know, and I'm using that word like that, not believe. When you know that you're better than everybody for reasons that you cannot choose, right? Because no woman can actually become a man. No woman can make it into the patriarchy. Sure, there are women who play along with the patriarchy. I'm looking at you, Christy Nome, Pam Bondi. Maybe I shouldn't be saying these things because I think Pam Bondi issued a memo recently calling me a domestic terrorist. But when you know that you're better than everybody, you're not going to accept feedback. You're just not going to. So now you end up with men. Here's some of the social costs. You end up with men who feel like kind of put out about their partners. And Ruvik has shared, a lot of these, right? We've seen some pretty amazing stories of on videos of people who are pretty banged up that maybe their partners are more intelligent or more driven, more successful than they are. And then it gets blamed on feminism, right? Because it certainly couldn't be that maybe the woman might be, I don't know, superior? Possible. You end up with men they're suffering just deep down, right? They're wondering why they aren't fulfilling what they keep being told. You're supposed to be superior at everything. Why aren't you stronger? You're supposed to be superior at everything. How come you feel emotions? You're superior at everything. How come you don't make more money? In a way, this is the interesting little tidbit that I think I pulled from this whole podcast thing. In a way, being free from stigma only leads to a different kind of stigma of its own. Because some of these men, if they have partners who are, more successful, I'm going to put that in quotation fingers, whatever that might mean, do they live up to the promises of the patriarchy? Certainly not. There's no doubt these are people who worry about what attribute they lack. What attribute, this is an attributional ambiguity. They worry about what attribute they lack, and as a result, the performance is worse. They worry about not following the stereotype of a patriarchy. And what's crazy, they suffer deep down for it, but then they make the rest of us suffer. Because then they're going to lean the fuck into it. Because you may ask yourself, why in the world would somebody want to be like this toxic, masculine kind of person? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to walk around and just be like, well, I'm better than you, and I'm better than you, I'm better than you, I'm better than... I'm unsure about you, because you look like you could kick my ass, so maybe I'm not better than you, but only because you can kick my ass. But I'm better than you, and I'm better than you, and there is a woman, of course, Why are they toxically masculine? They're toxically masculine because they have some sense of failure. God, you can look at, what's his face? What is his name? Andrew Tate. Right? He's like, oh, I got to fly all over the place and get laid. This is what I do because I'm so great. I'm going to go somewhere and get laid. Yeah, what are you missing in your life, Andrew? You poor kid. So what do you do here? So now we've got, boys who did worse than girls in school because they didn't accept feedback. They didn't realize that they needed to learn stuff in school. And so now they've reached this point where they may feel this sense of failure because they're not living up to the promises of a patriarchy. What's the answer here? Unequivocally, the answer is not to make things easier for boys in school, which was what was thrown about in this podcast. They say, you know what, we got to figure out something, and we better do it fast. Boys are falling behind. We better do something to level the playing field. Level the playing field. Level the playing field. People who have had access to education this whole time, we need to now level the playing field with people who have had access for maybe 50 years. Equal access for about 50 years. Are you out of your mind? If you do that, you add to the problem that already exists. The patriarchy already calls these boys naturally superior. If you're going to go, listen, you are naturally superior, but let me tell you what we're going to do. We're just going to bump it up a little bit. What we're going to do is reduce the test scores by maybe 10% for you. It's just going to make it worse. It's going to make it far worse. The answer at this point, this is going to be a tough one. The answer at this point is honesty. All we have to do is say, flat out, I'm saying it now, love to hear somebody like President Trump say, men are not naturally superior. Say it with me, everybody. Men are not naturally superior. You can open your windows and go, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Men are not naturally superior. And this isn't just philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's not ideology. It's not feminism. We can measure this. We have measured this. Let me rephrase that. We have measured this. And I've already mentioned this book, The Stronger Sex, over and over. The author, Star Vartan, great book about the strengths of estrogen-dominant bodies. We can measure this. We have measured this. You can read it in the Stronger Sex book. You can look at graduation rates from college. It turns out now, I think it was doctorate degrees. Doctorate degrees are now screwed. Screwed. This is just like sex is not rewarding, right? Whoa. Something wrong with my mouth tonight, along with a microphone. Things cutting in and out. I also cannot speak. Oh, what the hell was I talking about? Graduation rates? I don't know. It's not just philosophy. Screwed. Skewed! That's what I was going to say. Oh my gosh. So it turns out that doctorate degrees, doctorate degrees have now become skewed. Skewed toward women. I used to be that was really skewed. The idea when somebody has said, right, you can see this on television programs. Somebody goes, Amy cannot word today. When somebody says, oh, here comes Dr. Jones or whatever, right? And they turn and it's a man and a woman. It's always it's always the man, right? That's the doctor. It's never the woman. Why would a woman get a doctorate degree? Now it's skewed toward women. Because men are just not naturally superior. It's okay. It's not like this should be something men should be ashamed of. It's not like anybody should be ashamed of being who they are. The patriarchy created this problem. By its nature, a patriarchy creates this problem. More patriarchy is not going to solve it. Unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. That's not how it happens. It's not, oh, something broke. It's not going to solve the problem. We solve this problem ultimately. If you have boys who are falling behind girls, we have to solve this problem first by acknowledging, we have to acknowledge first that we caused this problem. Right? Patriarchy caused this problem. The other thing that we have to acknowledge, and you've got to, I mean, this will get me labeled as woke. So I think I'm going to do it. Second, only by favoring equality, only by favoring equity, will we ever be able to expect that people will perform at the level that they ought to. When equality and equity are the norm, as opposed to a way of fighting stigma, then will people be able to perform at the level that they ought to. They really can reach. I don't mean I don't mean women. I don't mean black people. I don't mean queer people. I do partly mean white men who are being hosed by this. And really what I mean is all of us. So that's what I had for tonight. Um, it was an interesting podcast, and I guess I will just end by saying, Ruvik, thank you. Keep bringing those, because look at all that. It was a whole conversation. Here you go. Oh my gosh, wait, look, Margie put her actual phone number up here. What would be great is if somebody called this right now. Somebody picks up the phone, just, hey, is Margie there? Huh? No, there's no Margie here. Then the next one of us calls. Hi, is Margie there? What? No, there's no Margie. Hangs up. Third person. Hello, is Margie there? Well, I told you. We don't have a Margie here. And then Margie, you can call and go, hey, this is Margie. Did I get any messages? No? Crap. I think it's a Spike Jonze joke. Yeah, Bo says, I remember when remembering phone numbers was just dancing on a keypad. Now, right, when you're typing on a thing, well, I'm going to put this, I got to hold on to it. But like when you're typing on a keyboard now, let me see if I can do this, right? When you have two fingers and all that, the two thumbs and all the deal there, like I looked at that and like that was pretty cool. But then I was thinking back to, well, here we go. Actually, I've got my, how often do I bring this up? My reverse Polish notation calculator. It's like every 2 weeks, right? But I was thinking about like having a calculator in like a physics test. This was a couple of years ago. You might have to put a 0 at the end of that. Anyways, some years ago. And I can remember like having a whole hand pressing buttons, right? Not on one of these because this is relatively new, but a whole hand put in, and plus I was also using the HP 15C, I think, whatever it was, the scientific one, not the financial. So the silver one, not the gold one. Anyway, having a whole hand, it was probably my left hand though, pressing like bunches of fingers, and I think back to that and I'm like, that was on a calculator. Like it's pretty funny to consider. The end. Oh gosh, and Margie had to bring up, yeah, what do you mean touch tone? That was fancy. Yeah, I was also on dial phones for the longest time. I mean, I was probably 10 or 12. And then do you remember it wasn't touch tone. I can't remember what they called it, but it was like a button and then all it did was just go, right? It made the actual sound. You'd hit zeros. I don't know what that was, but pulse dialing. Pulse, that's what they called it. Oh my gosh. Anyway, here we go. Ooh gosh, Anita says they remember their home phone number from when they were 4. Sorry, which was useful because it was your brother's until recently. Oh my gosh, he never moved. Wowzers. Oh wow, an artist's view. Hello, an artist's view. My goodness, this person just here. I've got to pop it up. Look at this. Good evening, your brilliance. I may just leave that up for the rest of the show. I don't know. Maybe not. Good evening. Thank you so much. What's funny is I've got the book The Artist's Way right there. So as you have an artist walking down the artist's way, you can watch them, and then you have an artist's view. It's funny. Thank you so much. What else do we have here? Oh gosh, this is oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah. I think you mentioned this once before. So here we go. Angela says when she was on the UK Birmingham Community Committee, post-transition, she was able to be equal to the men by playing their game, whereas the other women didn't get listened to. I'm going to tell you, I'm surprised you could play that game, because now I suck at it. Now I'm so horrible at playing that game. I have people like I've known since, as presenting masculine, that now I just kind of sit back and go, yeah, mm-hmm. Whereas it used to be like I would not. So it's kind of interesting. So, here we go. So Yeah, Anita brings up separating the sexes would have been terrible for them, assigned male but behaving all naturally feminine. Oh, it's just what I learned. Right? I grew up with sisters. You have people who go, "Hey, you want to go throw around a football?" I don't know how you do that. But you know, pass around a football. What do you do with those? Anyway, you throw it around, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I was thinking about like going to Save On and looking at the makeup, the new makeup that came in. I'd like to do that, please. I've always loved makeup. Um. Oh, this is so interesting point. So Margie brings up that when we look at people with ADHD, um, especially so kids with ADHD. So boys tend to have hyperactive type, while girls more often have inattentive type, which is easier not to notice and presumably meaning not to measure as well. And so I guess what I was going to say, yeah, I think I would say, all other things being equal, like how do economists say that? I can't think of how you put that, but yeah, I think I would say like everything else being equal, I believe we can look now at the patriarchy as providing new ways of stigmatizing people. And I guess maybe the point I didn't make super clear, which it just struck me, I didn't actually say these words. The problem here is just purely patriarchy. And maybe I shouldn't even say patriarchy because patriarchy is a form of stigmatization. The problem ultimately is stigmatization. When you have a group of people that goes, well, we're naturally superior, whatever it is, whether that's racist, whether that's sexist, whether that's gender identity, whether that's people who go, well, I'm MAGA and you're not. No, I'm not. Whenever you have a group that thinks itself naturally superior. So, patriarchy is one of those, and it's quite well entrenched in today's society. So I think I would just say, all things being equal, yeah. Um, no doubt there are neurodiversities that cause some of this. There are a lot of things. But of course, we can also say, just by using the word neurodiversity, in fact, actually, let me use the word that I learned, right? Neurodivergent, to imply that you can diverge from the regular way of using your brain, as if there's some particular way you should. But, I'll also have to go with gender non-conforming. You're now not conforming with whatever gender apparently must be. So, in itself, just that word is stigmatization. So, this is 100% true. All your intelligence comes from your facetiousness. It really is. This is why I love popping your comments up, because I always end up going, oh my gosh, that was somebody. Here we go. I'm just going to pop this up. We can say it again. Men are not naturally superior. um, Screwed. Hi, Victoria, by the way. I didn't know you were there, Victoria. Um, I don't even know how to pronounce this, but that's pretty good. Irreverence. There you go. Intelligence through irreverence. Look, boy, those words worded. I may not be able to say skewed. May not be able to say success. But intelligence through irreverence. That was pretty good. Ooh, gosh, this is a great. Oh my gosh, I love this comment. In the 1950s, women were supposed to go for the MRS degree. Yeah. Ouch. That's such a bummer. I mean, it's a good way to put it. I think it's 100% true. So, um, see, wouldn't this be great? If we call this that, you have to be the fourth person to call, right? We have to have three people, and we can, spread it out a little bit, like 10 minutes or something like that. But then when they go, what? No, we don't have any messages. You go, well, you were supposed to record. This was my phone number when I was a kid. What the hell? What kind of service is this? Jeez. It could work. It could be a good joke. Oh gosh, I'm way behind on messages. If we can get our economy rejigged to actually work with full automation and AI, oh boy. And we have instituted universal basic income, so people can do what they want, and now with capital demands they do, we have a chance. Yeah, I mean, I'm good. I guess good luck on this, boy. It's going to be so tough to get somebody like an Elon Musk or somebody, right? To get some like an Elon Musk or somebody who's like, well, I worked really hard for these government subsidies with companies that I bought and didn't create so that other people can do the thinking for me and make me a bunch of money. I worked really hard for this. And so there you go. Oh gosh, Anita, did I? Oh my gosh, I just read this. I skipped the first message in the sequence. Did I? What'd I miss? Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Maybe it didn't pop up on this. I think maybe it didn't pop up, or maybe I didn't see the connection between the two. I apologize. Um, where do we go? Mama. Okay, here we go. Oh, mothers. Here we go. So Angela's mother. So first of all, let me just say, Angela's mother always supported her, which I'm going to tell you. I think most people here are going to be like, "Wow, really? I didn't realize they did that. Mothers do that." But Angela says her mother was also a very strong personality. Um, and she thinks that's where she got it from. For what it's worth, my mother is not, and maybe that's where I get that from too. I don't know. Um, Here we go. And then Margie says, so obviously Margie's mom was too. And then Margie goes on to say the effect it had on her was unfortunately the opposite, that she felt just plain old unsupported. That is a fascinating point. It's, I don't know how much I want to attack that. Because I actually want to, I actually kind of want to grab this one, because I think there's a connection. And wait until you hear my connection. So Victoria brings up sometimes binaries feel like violence. It's like the radical classification of things limits us from bearing witness or expressing in complexity the phenomenon of existence. First of all, who talks like that? I mean, that was no, that was beautiful. That's the kind of comment I would type. Thank you, Victoria. Um, I agree with you when you come up with a system where everything is yes or no, that there's no in between. There's no, well, this is a varying shade of yes. Well, let me rephrase that too. When you have a system where there can be no, even getting rid of the idea that not everything is that not everything is a varying shade of yes, I would say. I agree with you. Feels like violence, and I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, violence doesn't need to be physical, of course. A sense of feeling attacked. When somebody says you're not part of the binary, you go, oh, thanks. So oh my goodness, pardon me. Yeah, the radical classification of things. And I agree. So to bring this back to what Margie said, I think when you have a strong personality who's a big effect on you, we learn very early on that it's like, well, it's either this or nothing. And those binaries is what those binaries end up hurting us. They're really rough. Thank you, Victoria. That was beautiful. Oh, thank you. So here we go, Anita. I appreciate you summarizing. So Anita says their remark on separating the sexes was commenting on the idea to separate boys and girls in school. Oh, because now it's set up to sit still and behave, which is natural only to girls. That's an interesting point. That there are still natural proclivities of one gender versus the other. And I wonder, I'm only going to throw this out as a wonder because I don't know where else to go with this. I mean, I have a thought and I'll throw it out afterward. But I wonder if that ends up being social still. That if it isn't natural to girls to sit still, but still something that's an application of social pressure, that boys are allowed to go out and run, jump, and climb trees. Girls should be sitting there and looking pretty. So I wonder if that's how much social pressure is there. The reason I bring this up, the reason I ask this question, not just blind theoretical thought, there are studies now, and I'll bring up the book, The Stronger Sex again. Is it clear that I liked that book? Star is a cool person. I like Star. I was supposed to talk to her last night, and I didn't get there. So we're talking, I think, tomorrow? Thursday? Thursday. Um, Friday for her, because she's in Australia. So anyway, point being that in that book, there are studies that show that physically there's very little difference between boy bodies and girl bodies in terms of strength, in terms of speed. Um, the biochemistry is very similar because there's no dominant hormone at that point. When you have no dominant hormone, the biochemistry would be similar, is similar. We measure this. Well, I don't think we've measured biochemistry, but certainly strength and speed and all the things. So what is left? Is it social? Is it natural in one way? I still think it's a good question. Something to consider. What else do we have here? Because it's 6 o'clock. I would even consider taking a break and actually playing a game because I don't think we did that. Well, I wasn't here on Sunday. I had the headache. I don't think we played on Tuesday either, the Tuesday before. So anyway, let me check these comments and then we'll. So Angela says, I have noticed that my parents were very different to the normal that the rest of this community has experienced. Yes, quite true. Yes, and Angela says she was extremely lucky to have her parents, especially as they were born in the 1920s. I gotta tell you, I agree. I mean, who was it? I can't even think. There was somebody I was talking to recently, last 5 years or something. And I was like, hey, what are you going to do for the holidays or something? And the person goes, oh, my whole family's getting together. And I went, oh, okay. I mean, I guess good luck with that. The person's like, no, it's going to be great. My family's very close. We get together, we have a good time, we talk about what happened during the year. We don't get to see each other that often, and it's really great because my mom and dad are still together and they're happy, and they model happiness for us, and we all just go away feeling energized. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, who has this? So you're like a Norman Rockwell painting, like something off of one of those, off of, like the cover of a catalog. But that's not real. That's not natural. Anyway, Angela, I'm glad it was real and natural for you now that I've dumped all over it. I guess that's the point. It was really funny because to me, because you get especially like Gen X people, they're just like, oh god, my family's awful. Oh my gosh. If there's one thing I'd like to do is make sure I don't have to spend time with my family during during the holidays. And yes, here you go. Family sounds disturbingly healthy. It was disturbing because I ended up going like this. When I thought about that, like when I tried to put myself in that situation, I was like, that'd be disturbing. Like I can't imagine like going somewhere and having my whole family together and like, extended family and all the people and hanging out. Nobody gets too drunk and nobody yells at somebody else. It's like, I don't know. Disturbed me, the idea of having all of those people in one place. Anyway, I'm with you. I'm going to read this one from Anita, who says the effect of coming out for them felt like they have a much better chance to be seen for who they really are. I believe very strongly. There was a quote I was actually going to throw in here at the end of this live stream here, and I didn't. But it came from. So I mentioned I was reading Storm Fairy Wolf's book, The Satyr's Kiss, it's called. And at the end of it, there are a lot of some rituals and things for like coming out and hand fasting, and then ultimately like remembering people, some memorial services. And I guess where I was going to go with this is that there's a quote that I got out of it that says basically, we in the queer community know very well what it's like to be bullied, what it's like to be chased, what it's like to be hated for who we are. And of any group on the planet, it is we who should have greater empathy, who should be able to feel for these people whom we see being bullied, being hated. It's incumbent upon us to model this level of not just empathy, but well, I'm going to go back to the other two words I had, equality and equity. It's up to us. We are really the group to do that. And so I bring this up because, yeah, when you come out and you feel like now people can see who you are, see through the stigma to who you really are, like we understand that feeling. And I think there are too many people who don't. I'm sorry, Margie, if that made you cry. Um, Too many people don't. So it's incumbent upon us. Now I'm going to cut it there. Let me go ahead and take a break. At least I don't have to change my headset. I mean, that's kind of nice. I got to figure out what to do with this mic, though. I don't know what to do because it's bumming me out. Anyway, I'm going to take a break, and we will we'll play a game in 5 minutes. So be right back.